buy anything from us without national banks. We can't sell anything without national banks' approval because we are officially in special loans. So
traditionally, the United States overrides are left outside of the bankruptcy process.
An override is outside of the bank if it's a standalone override and that has no leverage on it. If the override had leverage on it, it would be within the purpose of the bank. Yeah.
What's happened here? So the only way out here is $4 million for arbitration, with a maximum payout potential payout of $80 million.
Correct.
Well, it's kind of a no-brainer, right?
No, for all the reasons I just said, it's not a no-brainer. But if somebody understands what's happened and has a positive view on the damages, then even if we won, let's say best case outcome, we win an $80 million judgment against Bellatrix. That is worth more than the market cap of the entire company.
So you take the company?
No, because
it works differently than the U.S.
Because you're pari passu. This is the whole piece that we spent probably $50K of our legal fees on, is trying to understand our security position and how we could change it.
But you're pari passu with who? The bank?
No, in Canada, in a creditor position, just like in the United States, we become this $80 million judgment becomes a judgment against the company, which is pari passu to its other creditor obligations, which are behind the first lien. And the argument is, are we pari passu or are we behind the second lien? And depending on their obligations and how they've written them, and we don't have access to that loan agreement for their second lien, our counsel's view is that best case, we are pari passu with their unsecured notes in a judgment scenario. And so to Steve's point, we could spend...
And what is the second lien? So what's the number on it?
Right now, they're expecting it to be, they just closed that transaction, about $150 million. And so if they take the company over, then you have probably $70 million, give or take, of bank line, which would stay on, so you don't have to worry about that. You have, because there's cash flow to support it, you have about $150 million of second lien that is converted, wiped out the equity, and has taken over the company. And then they now have to pay and go through a court-appointed process to pay and make offers to pay to the unsecured creditors. And every single unsecured creditor then lines up, states their case, and they have to go through that plan in Alberta. And we would be one of those creditors for $80 million.
So if we don't fight this, then we're looking at 5 cents on the dollar.
Best case.
In return, roughly.
That's the better way of putting it, Nick. That's exactly right. If we don't fight this, we're looking at 5 cents on the best case. We're looking at cents on the dollar. And it is a miserable situation.
How the fuck, after this was written on a second lien loan, does our working interest go pari passu?
Our working interest is completely removed from this process. It's the judgment that is not. So the working interest is remote from bankruptcy, remote from anything of restructuring that Bellatrix does. It's any judgment that we would receive from a court case or from this arbitration case that is pari passu in our counsel's advice to the unsecured notes, because it's a corporate judgment on the behaviors.
Note, you just said it just finished securitizing now.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. Bellatrix, the company, has finished so let me maybe take a step back. Bellatrix, the company.
They've done the restructuring. They've taken out a new credit line of $150 million.
What they've done is they had a $250 million USD unsecured notes that were due in 2020, and that has been the primary overhang on this stock. This company is over-levered. Bellatrix management went out and negotiated with the largest holders of that bond issuance, which was EIG and KKR, and converted them in a standard private equity mechanism, swapped $80 million, give or take, of their unsecured notes to secured second lien, and bought them 3 more years on their payment terms at the same interest rate of like 8.25%, and negotiated to get a equity injection of, I believe, up to $40 million from these same investors, which buys them 20% of the company, or more than 20% of the company, which effectively buys them control over the board and day-to-day decision making. Now in their arrangement, they had announced that there was about another $50 million to $70 million of room. And so there's a little bit more room for them to do this again, to take out more of their unsecured notes. So that's Bellatrix.
When were these actually underwritten?
This
Before
month.
or after our deal with them?
Their notes?
Yes.
The unsecured... The unsecured $250 million USD offering that Bellatrix, the corporation, did, I believe, was after our joint venture, because they had an activist shareholder in Orange Capital from New York and Bow Post from Boston, and so they underwrote. They didn't put more equity in. They didn't allow any equity financings, but they underwrote a $250 million unsecured note offering at 8.25 or 8.5, I believe. And then in September of this year, so just this month, they closed on a restructuring of a portion of that note into a second lien. And so we've been watching that very closely, because we've always been very conscientious about security on this judgment. And our question has been, how do we get security in advance before we even file arbitration? We were working on that in January of this year. And as the audit was coming to a close, and we already knew it was validating all of our assumptions. And so what our counsel has said, in the way our security position is our working interest are, 70 wells, the cash flow from those wells, which was about $2 million in H1 at low gas prices, that is outside this entire process.
I think I might have just figured this all out. So the bank will sell you the loan, right? At a certain price.
They'll sell us the loan at $8.5 million, no discount.
Okay. $8.5 million. And then any fees or any accruals or any other dirty little secrets we need to know about on top of the $8.5 million?
From a bank? No way.
Bank fees, that's overdrafts, whatever.
Nope. That's where we stand today.
Million. Okay, so you add $8.5 million to the $4 million in potential litigation, gets you to $12.5 million. Your opinion is that the minimum payout is going to be $15 million.
That's my opinion.
Yep. So why don't we go to one of the funds, like Carval, that specializes in distress, and have a talk with them, or John Bryce, who left Carval and is now advising people on it. Because at the very least, what we can offer them, when's the arbitration finish and finalized? February, you said?
The arbitration schedule is scheduled to be done by February, and then they have deliberation. So that could take anywhere from 0 to 90 days. Precedent is about 60 days max.
Yeah, so that would take us to when? April?
Yes.
Okay, so the deal is, the bank now bought out at 8.5. The $15 million that you have, if you take, say, guarantee them, I don't know, $7 million or something as payment, guaranteed 6, 7, whatever, because their IRR is going to be astronomical on a deal like that. It can even be 3 or 4 million, right? Like if you do it within half a year, it's 100% plus the IRR.
Right.
And the rest goes to the shareholders, which is 4 or 5 million, which would be our legal costs. So that's essentially a free punt And if it all goes great,